de la escuela en casa. Subimos por la escalinata.
Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Louis blamed himself. After he graduated, he just spent more and more time in his room.
Y si has hecho el logro bien de
until
las
Mom got him a
mirillas,
job at the cannery.
con mirar esta última yo creo que te acaban dando el platino. Bueno, el logro, ya me entendéis. El logro de las mirillas. Entonces, para entrar donde Lewis tenemos que coger aquí. Cogemos, miramos y tiramos. Pata, pum, listo. Muy bien. Ahora bajamos.
Louis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on. Louis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot. He was so proud of being Indian. I think for him, it was a way to be something other than just a Finch.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Louis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Louis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery, but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that have not names. He knew it was all in his head. He took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more. I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Louis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Louis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first. He told me he'd made a new friend. On the edge of a city he named Louis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. and songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery, but his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination, so he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor, and he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis. He started drifting away from our reality. Minneapolis, until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Louis kept sailing on. In Louisburg, he heard rumors of a handsome queen. The queen was on her own quest for sinister serpents. He followed the sound of her electric sitar. His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination. But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Louis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him. began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker. He began to despise the man with a royal contempt. I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions. Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on inviting him. His queen waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do. Bend down his head. And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
Vale, la muerte de Lewis, vale, murió unos días antes de cumplir los 22 años. Lewis le gustaba fumar cannabis, ¿vale? Lewis llegó a un momento en el que tenía una adicción muy fuerte y decidió estar sobrio y decidió ir a un tratamiento. Lewis se dio cuenta lo estoy leyendo además de la wiki de Remains of Edith Finch, ¿vale? Está en inglés, así que lo voy traduciendo sobre la marcha. Lewis se dio cuenta de lo repetitiva y tediosa que era su vida y decidió cambiar eso creando como un avatar, el imaginario en su mente, que le estaban ocurriendo grandes cosas. Esto le hizo al Lewis real apático y depresivo. Aun sabiendo que Lewis solo tenía a su parte, digamos, de ficción, él se deprimió porque dijo que él nunca podría ser como era el Lewis de ficción, ¿vale? El caballero que lo tenía todo. Eso le hacía soñar despierto, ¿vale? Y eso le hacía vivir en un mundo que no era el suyo, como si estuviera en dos lugares a la vez, como lo del shifting. Su jefe se dio cuenta de que Lewis era muy metódico, era muy buen empleado y nadie dijo nada. Pero eventualmente, juntando la vida mundana de Lewis combinado con lo de todo lo que le pasaba a su personaje ficticio, que él no podría tenerlo, eso le hizo tener tendencias suicidas. Y eso fue lo que le quitó, digamos, la vida, ¿vale? O sea, que le dio, yo puedo entender que es, a ver cómo lo explico, después de todo, lo que aquí pone en inglés se llama maladaptive daydreaming. Tenía sueños lúcidos, repetitivos, dificultad para las tareas diarias y que solo quería estar en el mundo de los sueños, en el mundo de los sueños, ¿vale? es una referencia también, porque tanto Molly como Lewis, Molly, la hija de Enid, la más chiquitita, la que vimos en el primer vídeo, fallecieron a través de alucinaciones. Molly murió alucinando por las vallas y Lewis murió alucinando por sus problemas concernientes a estar abstemio de fumar María, ¿vale? Entonces, pues, para salir de la de Lewis nos meteríamos aquí, abriríamos la puerta y saldríamos.
On the way back from
Lo
Lewis's
tiraríamos por
funeral,
aquí, ¿ves?
my
El
mom
camino
told
de
me to start
vuelta del
packing.
funeral de Lewis, mi madre me dijo que empezara a hacer los maletas.
She waited until the day before we left to
Espero
tell
al día antes de
Edie.
marcharnos para
I'm
contárselo a
not sure if
él.
she wanted to make it
No sé si
easier
quería
or
ponérselo
harder.
más fácil o más difícil. Vale, aquí ya llegaríamos al cuarto de Edith, el final. Entonces corto aquí el vídeo y nos vemos ya en el último.